This video will contain spoilers from the world and story of Portal and Portal 2. Please beware. Now usually when we talk about interesting and iconic video game protagonists, we tend to think of characters that have rich backstories, interesting lore, and a lot of interaction with us over several games. I mean, you might think of someone like Ezio from the Assassin's Creed franchise, or perhaps Lara Croft from the Tomb Raider franchise. And yet, somehow, despite everything, Valve has managed to accomplish creating several video game protagonists that barely have any interactions with the audience and yet are as iconic as ever. And well, today we're going to be talking about one of those. Today we're going to be talking about Chell, the protagonist from the Portal series, starring both in Portal 1, Portal 2, and appearing also in the Lab Rat comic. I'll be telling you everything we know about her, from her muddled backstory all the way to current age, what she went through in the games, as well as any interesting trivia that we can find online. So with that out of the way, get into your long-term relaxation vault and make sure to tuck in well, because who knows how long you're going to be in there for. And let's go. Now let's start with the easy stuff. Chell is a relatively fit and young, approximately mid-20s woman that appears to be of Latin or perhaps just multicultural descent, though one of her concept artists said that they wanted her to have a hint of Japanese ethnicity. As far as her appearances go, she mostly wears an orange lab coat, most likely given to her by Aperture, which is rolled up in the first game and then rolled down, revealing a white Aperture tank top in the second game. The only major thing about her appearance that does change in between the two specific games is that in the first one, she has bare feet with what they call advanced knee replacement, which is basically what allows her to land from any height without taking any damage. However, in the second game, she dons the long fall boots, which essentially allow her to do the same thing without looking as creepy as the first set does. Now, talking about her backstory is where this actually gets quite complicated, because Chell never really speaks in the game, and well, as far as the games go, it seems like there isn't much to know about her, and yet there are still some things that we can dig up. Firstly, going all the way into her youth, Chell appears to actually be a daughter of some Aperture employee. We can find this based on a poster that is actually signed Chell, next to supposedly her potato experiment, which can be found in the display of Bring Your Daughter to Work Day experiments in the second game. The wiki estimates that this fair would have probably taken place in the early 90s, which would most likely place Chell's birth somewhere around the 1980s, and thus she would probably be in her early 20s during the event of the first game. Now yes, technically speaking, GLaDOS does drop many hints during the second game about Chell in terms of her being a loner and not really having anyone to go back to. However, chances are all of these are just derogatory and meant to deter her from her goal, and for the purposes of this video, we're just gonna take all of them with a grain of salt. But a character like this, that never speaks, it seems almost ridiculous to discuss traits and personality. However, luckily, due to the Lab Rat comic, we can actually learn, well, at least a little bit. As we can see in Doug Gratman's file, Chell scored incredibly high on the tenacity scale, being all the way up in the abnormal category, with the proctor's note being, "Test subject is abnormally stubborn, she never gives up ever." Clearly foreshadowing how Chell would basically never give up during the Portal games, even when going up against incredible odds. Additionally, we know that in an interview with Aperture Science, when she was asked why she should be accepted, instead of responding normally, she actually responded in binary, and if you translate that binary, it reads, "The cake is a lie." Perhaps showing some of her defiancy against GLaDOS already from the very beginning. Now before we move on, one more thing I want to mention is, as far as I understand, Chell would not have become a test subject if not for Doug Gratman moving her name up in the Excel sheet where all the test subjects are listed, considering the fact that her evaluation simply reads "rejected, do not test." Oh, and when talking about all of these reports, I'm sure you're curious if we ever get to learn Chell's last name, and unfortunately we don't. Every single place where it is shown, it is seen as redacted. And yes, this could potentially show that there might be some darker secret about Chell's family that we simply never get to know, perhaps even linked to her father, the potential employee. Now to kind of go over her story at Aperture, she is literally labeled as test subject number 1 due to Doug, and thus has presumably been there since the very beginning of when GLaDOS was activated. Initially, she goes through the first game, as you can kind of expect, and she manages to get back out onto the surface. However, at the very end, a robot is seen dragging her back inside. Luckily for her, Doug Gratman actually also sees this, as he manages to get out of the facility at the same time, and he sees her be put into the deep relaxation vault where you wake up at the start of the second game. Now here it's actually only because of Doug that she manages to survive, because the systems of her vault start failing, and he is the one who manages to reroute them despite being shot through the leg. And even though he technically then puts her into sleep indefinitely without a wake-up date, at least in his eyes she manages to survive. And with that you basically move into the second game, and we kind of know how the story goes there, everything with GLaDOS and Wheatley, which essentially ends with Chell leaving the Aperture Science Facility, finding herself in a vast field, God knows how many years after her original enrollment in the Enrichment Center. And now that is effectively all of the base information that we have about Chell. However, there is a bit more information in terms of trivia and fun information that I want to get into just before we end this video off. Now, if you ever wonder whether Chell is actually mute or whether she speaks in the game, the developers from Valve can actually give us an answer to that. So supposedly when it comes to Gordon Freeman, whether he speaks or doesn't speak in the game is kind of ambiguous. However, with Chell, they specifically stated that she doesn't speak even though she might very well be capable of it, simply as another show of defiance towards GLaDOS. It is also worth noting that before the conceptualization of Portal 2, Chell was actually meant to be much more involved in the Half-Life universe, even supposedly having a serious relationship with one of the main Half-Life protagonists. However, this was later scrapped as Portal 2 came closer to its creation. Now, another interesting question that many people have actually tried to answer is how long does Chell spend in what you might call suspended animation in the relaxation vault, so that by the time she is awoken in Portal 2, the announcer's voice just reads a string of 9s. Now, there have been many theories that try to answer this, and there isn't one that is particularly specific. The wiki seems to estimate that it's been at least 50,000 years. However, based on other estimates, it could have also been as little as 20, with the announcer's voice simply getting corrupt because of the decay of the facility. So at the end of the day, it is basically impossible to say how long she spent under. However, we do know that it's probably been at least long enough for her potato plant experiment to grow into an enormous size and cover the entirety of the ceiling. And finally, if you're interested in who was the original model that Chell was created after, it would be Alessia Glitwell, who was coincidentally also going to be the model for Zoe from Left 4 Dead, however was later replaced by Sonja Kinski. But with that, I'm gonna end the video, so I hope you guys enjoyed and learned at least something new about the fascinating world of Aperture Science and Portal. If you liked the video, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. And if there's anything that I missed or any theories of your own that you would like to cover, make sure to leave those down in the comments as well. I would very much love to read them. Now with that, I'm gonna wish you all a beautiful rest of today, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.